what's great about economic development is it is a team sport. And every time we make an announcement or break ground or cut a ribbon, it's pretty special. And by the way people view those, I think, is backwards. Like, people view the ribbon cutting as this just ceremony, but it's actually the most real of all of it. So the announcement's the hope. The groundbreaking is the progress, but the ribbon cutting's the reality. And when you cut the ribbon, the jobs are there, and people have filled them. So I actually believe the ribbon cutting is the most important one of all of them.
Welcome back to the Middle Tech Podcast. You've got Logan Jones here, and today Evan and I got to sit down for an interview with the Governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear. It's obviously a very special interview for Evan and I, who are both born and raised in the state of Kentucky and have dedicated our early careers to building businesses here. We care very deeply and love the state of Kentucky, just as Andy Beshear does. I wanted to say at the beginning of this is not a political conversation. Kentucky has been on a roll from an economic development perspective, and so this is a conversation celebrating the wins of our state and talking about the impact that innovation and startups have on our state's economic development. And the data speaks for itself. Under Andy Beshear's leadership, his administration has brought in over $35 billion worth of private sector investment, which is more than any governor in Kentucky history. And so we talk about a lot of really big projects that have been happening recently in our state. Projects like the $6 billion BlueOval SK battery park being built in Hardin County, Kentucky, and is expected to begin production in 2025. We also talk about the $2 billion AESC Gigafactory, building EV batteries in Warren County, Kentucky, which is responsible for bringing over 2,000 advanced manufacturing jobs to our state. And then there's also the $712 million battery facility in Shelbyville, Kentucky, projected to bring over 1,500 jobs to our state. All of these initiatives combined really position Kentucky to be a leader in the next generation energy space and are expected to bring adjacent industries and jobs along with them. As for Middle Tech, this kicks off our focus highlighting the economic development impact of our state's innovation and startup ecosystems, telling the stories of those that are in the arena making progress happen. And also, one quick note, this conversation was recorded before the devastating flooding hit Eastern Kentucky. So we know that this episode is likely going to get a good amount of attention, and so we wanted to ask our listeners to consider donating to Kentucky's Storm Relief Fund, which is linked in the show notes. We'll also be linking some other resources for anyone that feels compelled to help, but there are a lot of people in need right now, and we would just ask our listeners to consider donating if they're able. So we hope you enjoy the conversation. Before we dive into this one, we just want to get a quick word from the partners that make Middle Tech possible.
Before we highlight our sponsors, we'd just like to state that the views and content shared on this platform do not necessarily reflect those of our show sponsors. That being said, Middle Tech is supported by KY Innovation, the Kentucky Cabinet for Economic Development's Office of Entrepreneurship. KY Innovation exists to support and develop Kentucky's startup ecosystem, and we are proud to be supported by an organization whose mission aligns so closely with ours. If you are a founder building in Kentucky, you need to check out the resources that KY Innovation has to offer. You can find more information by clicking the link in our show notes or going to kyinnovation.com.
Middle Tech is sponsored by Bolt Marketing. Take your website to the next level with a website that's built to work. At Bolt Marketing, they're revolutionizing websites for small businesses that are affordable, customizable, and hassle-free. Whether you have a construction company, a boutique clothing store, or you own a hot yoga studio, they have options for you. Click the link in our show notes to explore their marketing options that can transform your marketing and grow your business. And as a personal note, Bolt Marketing built our website, and they were awesome to work with throughout the entire process. We highly recommend working with.
Middle Tech is also supported by Hunsicker, an impact venture studio based in Lexington, Kentucky. Hunsicker is creating companies out of the ordinary by founding and funding the next generation of purpose-driven startups. They partner with founders to create indispensable solutions to the world's most fundamental problems. On a quarterly basis, they host an invite-only intimate gathering called Fireside Convos, where attendees representing a wide network of stakeholders in the regional entrepreneurial ecosystem discuss timely topics, including the role of AI for startups out of Kentucky and the challenges of identifying and attracting talent. To be considered as a guest, visit hunsicker.co/fireside to apply.
All right, Governor Beshear, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us and talk a little bit about Kentucky and economic development.
No, I'm excited to do it. Excited to reach your audience and love what you all are out there doing.
Appreciate that. Very much appreciate that. It was a funny coincidence when we first came in. I saw the bust of Albert Benjamin Chandler.
Yes.
Because I'd actually had my first question that I wanted to ask was a quote from him.
And the quote is, "I've never met a Kentuckian who wasn't either thinking about going home or actually going home." And I feel like that just encapsulates how Kentuckians feel about Kentucky. So the first question I wanted to ask was just what that quote means to you and why you think Kentuckians are so passionate about our state.
Well, I love Kentucky with every part of my being, and so does just about every other Kentuckian. Home means something more to us than it does to most Americans. The dirt we're from is part of who we are. It's part of our DNA. And it's that idea that when you're at the airport and you're on that last leg coming back to Kentucky, because we got to take a connection to get just about anywhere, the joy you start seeing and the connections you start seeing amongst people that are just excited to get home is special. You see it in our communities when we're doing something new in our downtowns or bringing a new park or doing improvements in ways that'll improve life in a Kentucky community. You see so many people come out to celebrate it. So I think it's something that we feel about where we're from. It's something we feel about each other too. I believe it has a lot to do with that community aspect. And I think it gives us an advantage if we use it right. You know, we launched this new Kentucky Home initiative that's about taking that exact feeling, how much we love Kentucky, and spreading that to the world with an invitation to join, saying we love Kentucky and you will too. So that idea that for that next CEO thinking about where they're going to start their business or move their business, that we can give them an idea, not just what it's like to do business in Kentucky, but to actually live in Kentucky, to be a part of this culture that makes us so excited that no matter where we've been, we want to come home.
Yeah, and I know when people visit, they immediately feel it too. Right when they land, they interact with people here, that it's just kind of a good vibe. You know, it's just exactly what you were saying. And
so that's the connection we're trying to make with tourism.
Absolutely.
In New Kentucky Home, because we have so many people come and they love seeing the site, but then they go to the local restaurant.
Oh yeah.
They go to one of our parks. They see one of our downtowns. They go to something in the community, and it's one to grasp that piece and say, can't you see yourself moving here and living here and raising your family here?
Yeah. And you miss it when you leave. I've left. I've lived in California and came back, and I missed it a lot. But you are considered one of the most popular Democratic governors, if not the most popular, in a red state. What do you attribute that to, and what do you think the Democratic Party needs to do going forward to maybe have the popularity that you've had?
Well, I think the Democratic Party going forward needs to refocus. They need to re-earn the trust of working Americans. And the way to do that is to ensure that we run and communicate, but most importantly, govern where people's worries are when they wake up in the morning and when they go to bed at night. Because there are these core concerns that if somebody is worried about them, they don't get to anything else. Pick an issue that you care about a ton. If you're worried about the cost of your child's next prescription, you just don't get to that next issue. And so I think what Democrats need to do, but I'd really like to see Republicans do it too, is focus first on people's job, whether they make enough to support their family. Focus on the next doctor's appointment for our people, for themselves, their parents, their kids. How far do they have to drive to get there? Can they afford the prescription that they'll get while there? Focus on infrastructure, the roads and the bridges we drive every day being so important to our lives. Focus on the public school that we drop our kids off at. And focus not just on public safety in our communities, but whether people feel safe. Because even if the statistics show that people might be a little bit safer, if they don't feel safe, we need to do a little bit more. And none of that is political. Sometimes it gets caught up in politics. But I think the reason that we, and I got a lot of people around me here in Kentucky, have been successful is just a relentless focus on those things. You know, yes, I stand up for my beliefs. I vetoed one of the nastiest anti-LGBTQ bills the state's ever seen, and I did so because I believe all children are children of God, and I wanted somebody looking out for those kids. But the next day I was opening a new factory. The next day we were working on that new road. And so even people that might have disagreed with me on that veto knew that I was out trying to improve everybody's life and that they were going to see what we were doing in their daily life. Yeah. Because I think some of what we see nationally isn't people necessarily even disagreeing on an issue. It's that it might not impact their life on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. And that's where they want to see somebody out there doing work and trying to improve it for everyone. So we like to say we're not trying to move a state to the right or the left, but just forward.
And as a young person who, gets very fatigued with the divisiveness of the current political climate, I think that's my favorite part of having you as our governor is you want to bring people together. And you've also just shown great leadership through all of these, tragedies that the state is faced with, floods and tornadoes. But more so than that, somebody who wants to see the state thrive from an economic perspective so that I don't have to move away. I can stay here in Kentucky and thrive and find good employment. The economic development track record of your administration has just been fantastic. I mean, one of the strongest track records of any governor to this point. And I wanted to read something that I pulled from your all's website. Secured nearly $33 billion in private sector investment, which is the largest amount secured by any Kentucky governor, and secured nearly 1,000 economic development projects, creating nearly 51,300 full-time jobs. I wanted to ask, just for those who might not be super familiar about how everything in that realm works, how are these investments secured, and why do you believe that your administration has been able to find so much success there?
It's thrilling, and it's thrilling for all Kentuckians. Everywhere I travel right now on the economy, people are excited. And in a country that is pessimistic, being optimistic here in Kentucky from the local to the state level, it's this great energy that we have right now that we're seeing more and more companies want to be a part of. For far too long, people have looked down on us. And when you're from Kentucky, like y'all are, how that feels. Finally, people are starting to look up to us. And that feels pretty good. And it's been a long time coming. I believe this has been an all-in effort. This has been when a company locates in a community. Sure, I as governor have talked to them. We've worked through economic development to find the right site, make sure we have the power load they need, make sure we have the water capacity, make sure the infrastructure from roads and broadband and anything else they may need are there. They've also talked to the local county judge and the mayor and the community. And so what's great about economic development is it is a team sport. And every time we make an announcement or break ground or cut a ribbon, it's pretty special. And by the way people view those, I think, is backwards. People view the ribbon cutting as this just ceremony, but it's actually the most real of all of it. So the announcement's the hope. The groundbreaking is the progress, but the ribbon cutting's the reality. And when you cut the ribbon, the jobs are there, and people have filled them. So I actually believe the ribbon cutting is the most important one of all of them. You look at where the state is, and we need to update the website. We're at $35 billion now in private sector investment, the most of any governor. So, of course, one day I woke up, and I said, well, who's second? And they told me, your dad, Steve Beshear.
Wow.
Which led to a really important question. By how much?
Oh, yeah.
And the answer was $13 billion. So I immediately picked up the phone and called him. And I thanked him because I remember watching him during the Great Recession fight for 5, 10, 13 jobs at a time and how important they were. And so that's one thing that guides me. If we're looking at a county that hasn't seen enough jobs, the next employer that brings 15 people there is as important to me as the employer that's going to bring 100, maybe to a larger area or one that's seen more jobs. So it's thrilling when we look at now over 60,000 new jobs. We've broken every record for exports, for tourism. We are on a roll. Part of it's hard work. We have a great site development program because every time we put a new business on one of these sites, there's one less site. And so you constantly have to do that work. We're constantly looking at our incentives that are out there and trying to adjust them depending on what else is going on in the world. And so I think it's really important, just like in tech and just like in business, that you're always looking for what's next. And the more success you've had, the hungrier you need to be on what's the next program and the next program. But, I try to bring that to all different parts of what we do. We have been through a lot of natural disasters and obviously the pandemic on top of that. So I try to take the same approach we have in trying to always do better on economic development there as well. So you look at that travel trailer program we had, which is that intermediate housing. So after a disaster, we're going to bring people into our state parks, hotels, and we're going to house them for a week, maybe 2 weeks. But then what's that next piece? That takes about a year or maybe even a little bit longer for people to find permanent or semi-permanent housing. And so we developed this travel trailer program after the tornadoes. And it took us about 2 months to get it up and running. After the floods, it took us about 2 weeks. So my goal in the future is how do we make it 2 days? So I'm talking to the legislature about some grants where we could bring different RV parks or state parks up to have all that infrastructure to where we know we'll get hit by something again. But do we have what we need ready in each part of the state to just say go and to be able to roll in all those resources that are needed? And so if that's learning from what we've been through, but then just always trying to do better.
You know, I'm from Elizabethtown.
Yeah.
So we're one of the biggest beneficiaries of this economic development wave that
It's
you've
exciting.
brought to Kentucky. Very exciting. And I saw firsthand what that can do, you know, to a community. And the housing that's moved in, the new businesses, the new restaurants, the excitement of what's going on in downtown Elizabethtown, it's changed a lot. And so being a beneficiary of that's been really awesome to see. Another thing about Elizabethtown is I-65.
Yes.
And what's your take on, you know, Kentucky's central location in the United States and how that affects economic development and the businesses that are locating here?
Yeah, I think that there are 3 major selling points that we use for Kentucky. Each one is true, and each one gives us a big advantage. The first is speed to market. We have worked from our environmental permitters to our building code inspectors to make sure that we can get a new facility or a new business up and running faster in Kentucky than anywhere else. I remember Janet Yellen came into Advanced Nano Products in Elizabethtown, and they looked at her and said, we got this facility up and running 6 months faster than any of its kind ever in the world. That made me pretty proud as a governor. And I took that message back to our team because they needed to hear it and they needed to feel it. Just like BlueOval, the largest investment in our history, $5.8 billion, it'll be 5,000 new jobs, told her that they were finding all the people they needed, and their hiring is 85% or more local, Kentucky, which is really exciting. And I will say the people of E-Town and the people of Glendale have been amazing. Now, this is hugely disruptive to what life was like in Glendale, but they saw that this is the game changer. This is our Toyota, which changed everything in the 80s for us. This is for the next generation, something that can drive so much more investment to Kentucky, and they grabbed onto it. And yeah, there were some hiccups here and there, but just to see people of that small town taking pride in what was going to happen in their backyard, and then E-Town wrapping their arms around Glendale, it was pretty special. You got a great mayor in E-Town who's done a really good job down there, and that's what it takes. But you know, when we looked at SK, this is Ford and SK. It was the Korean American Society of Kentucky, whose president happened to live in Elizabethtown.
I've heard some good stories.
And that couple talking to them about how that community could be welcoming. So again, it's this everybody is part of the team, and you never even know when you're in your hometown or where you live, just smiling at that person that might not be from town and what that can mean and how they're going to feel. It's an amazing story, and while while the EV sector may not grow as quickly as it was originally thought, it's growing.
It will.
It's the future, and we're going to lead it.
Yeah, and I mean everything on that front, on the innovation front, is just moving so quickly right now, and you're starting to see this innovation economy really take root and continue to grow and flourish in the state. From your perspective, I'm curious what your read is on our innovation economy and maybe what some of our strengths are and areas we can improve.
So I think our innovation economy is picking up. I think we have a lot of the pieces and we have a lot going on. For instance, more research and development now going on in Kentucky, some of which was here and people didn't know about, like Marathon's R&D is in Ashland, Kentucky. Yeah. That's pretty special. And in fact, I was talking to someone the other day about aviation jet fuel, what's going to be the new types of jet fuel, and some of the research that was going on at Marathon. That made me pretty proud. It was in Kentucky. When you look at the new battery plant that's coming to Shelbyville, that's going to do the big storage batteries, 20-foot storage batteries, they're going to put their R&D inside the facility. And so more and more, we're not seeing a separation of, say, manufacturing and R&D, and that's really important to Kentucky that's got a lot more manufacturing. We're starting to see more startups in Kentucky, and what I love is around Kentucky, feeling like they don't have to just be in one city or another. I think what we need is more private sector capital that is here and not just close by, that is investing. You know, we have some good programs. We have the angel investors, which is helpful. We have 2 good government programs that come through the state. But building up the different levels of capital in Kentucky for companies to start and to grow, I think is really important. Because if we want that next Fortune 500, more often than not, they start. Whether that's in somebody's garage or in an office building, they start in the state that they stay in. And so for us, attracting that North American headquarters, yes, we want to do it. But helping to foster that next generation of entrepreneurs, especially in the tech area, is critically important.
Yeah, I'm a beneficiary of Keyhorse Capital 2 times now with 2 of my startups, and it's great to have capital like that here in Kentucky. And shout out to Kelby Price and that team at Keyhorse and everybody working so hard to bring that capital to founders like myself. It means a big difference because I've had to go to the coast and find money, and I've had to, find some here in the early stages from angels and groups like Keyhorse, and it does mean a huge difference to founders to be able to stay here and build here because that capital is so important.
Yeah, we want the next Bill Ready to stay in Elizabethtown and build his business out there, and actually just had a chance to talk to him at the World Economic Forum, talk about a guy that loves Kentucky and still is investing in Kentucky and has put a number of his businesses in Kentucky. But trying to make sure that we keep guys like you and women that are out there to make sure that we can do this right here. And I think in the post-COVID economy, you don't have to be on the coasts. No. Like maybe people thought that you used to, but we're going to have to continue to get the attention here to make sure that you can get that next great idea funded.
Absolutely. So we hear a lot about batteries, manufacturing, supply chain and transportation. Is there a part of our economic development that you think maybe is not talked about enough that is up and coming, or what gets you excited? Or you can pick one of those and maybe go deeper into one of them.
Well, certainly those are incredible areas, and what we're doing in batteries is going to create tens of thousands of additional jobs that we haven't seen yet, and all the science that goes into it. I mean, this is a rapidly evolving area where U of L and UK are both getting on board on the research and what it's going to mean having 4 massive facilities in Kentucky. It's going to be pretty special. But I'd say the pharmaceutical industry that is growing in terms of research and clinical trials in northern Kentucky is pretty exciting as well. We've invested along with some of the northern Kentucky groups on what will be a new research facility where smaller companies and startups can try to do some of their testing in the very beginning. Try to make sure that next pharmaceutical company is created in Kentucky, and it's creating a cluster like we have with our metals group, which is a really exciting group where they come together for pre-competitive causes like workforce. But here in northern Kentucky, what it can mean, because we already have one of the country's largest clinical trial companies, and with their location being able to bring in some of the newer companies could be really exciting. What that could mean for our universities, but in the end, we all lived through a pandemic. What that means for our people when you come out with that next really important pharmaceutical. Or think about it, what it means for Kentucky's workforce. When we look at our biggest challenges, it's heart disease, lung cancer, and diabetes. And so every new treatment that comes along for those, or for what we see so many of our loved ones dealing with, whether it's cancer or chronic pain, it helps our workforce, and it helps people to live fuller lives.
I think it's an exciting time to be leaning into something like pharmaceuticals or biotechnology, because you think about where artificial intelligence could take us in the near term, and there's just so many possibilities that could unfold it with that over the next 5-10 years.
We've got some companies doing some really interesting work in artificial intelligence. We've got a company in Nicholasville building robots that help stock shelves and do security at night. It's really interesting, the different things that are out there, and to see it growing in Kentucky. And I think we'll need to see more. AI is going to play an enormous role in society moving forward. I know there's still a lot to work out. And my belief is, at least for now, it's a tool. It's not the ultimate solution, but it's a tool that can help us work faster and hopefully work smarter. But being somebody that sometimes gets things generated from it, just make sure you read it for now. And it's really interesting to me, having become a lawyer right at the time when we stopped using the books and started using the search engines, how you asked the question determined the quality of your results. And so I think in this discussion of AI, and you all have much more nuance, people aren't talking about how important it's going to be to learn how to use it well and how to ask the question right to get the best answer.
Yeah, we're big proponents of that. Evan's current startup is in the AI space, helping to accelerate the RFP response process for these businesses that are building critical infrastructure. There's just so many different use cases for this, and we're trying to host a lot of events, just educating Kentucky about this new tool that we kind of have in our arsenal. Wanted to wrap things up, though, on kind of a forward-looking statement about the future of our economy and of where we're going to take energy. So we have this legacy of powering the country through coal. Now we have these battery manufacturing facilities moving in. I'm curious where you see our legacy and energy going into the future, and more specifically, if nuclear plays a role in that. I know that Senate Bill 198, I believe it was, that has been tossed around. I'm curious if that's something that could be part of our future.
Oh, it definitely plays a role. First, let me say, I think we ought to be proud of our history powering this nation. The Industrial Revolution was powered through coal and coal mined in Kentucky and it's the surrounding states. Kentucky helped power us through 2 world wars. And remember, these are hard-working coal miners that did it and didn't see all that investment that came out of it in the areas where they lived. And then when the energy economy started shifting, the term environmental justice came before the term economic justice. And so we didn't see the new energy jobs going where the traditional energy jobs were, and parts of our state were hit really hard by it. And so I think oftentimes when we talk about, when people outside of Kentucky talk about coal, they don't realize, to us, it's in part about abandonment or about not reinvesting, and that the people that helped our country to get where it is deserve better. And that's one of the reasons I'm for-laning the entire Mountain Parkway, why we're ensuring we get internet to every single part of Kentucky, because I saw more entrepreneurs in Whitesburg at an event talking about selling products all around the world because they had high-speed internet and that there are more, there's a better ability now to get around some of the challenges that we faced in the past. And we got to make sure we take advantage of that. But we also can't ever be left behind again. One of the reasons I push so hard to get those battery plants is we're the number 2 or 3 automotive producing state in the country. And I did not want to see what happened in the energy sector happen in the automotive sector. So my job is to make sure we're on the cutting edge and that we're never left behind, that we generate more jobs as we transition in the economy. And as we're looking at energy, there's I think companies look for 3 things. They look for reliability, they look for affordability, and they look for sustainability. And candidly, they probably look in that order at them. And there's nothing wrong with that. The light's got to come on. It's got to work in your business model. But virtually every new company that I talk to wants sustainability in their energy portfolio. And what that means is we've got to meet the needs of business. It's not about federal policy. It's not about state policy. It's about the private sector and where it's going what it asks for and what's required for those downstream clients. So in Kentucky, we need nuclear. We've got some really exciting hydro projects going, some of the most sophisticated small-scale hydro going. We're looking at green methane gas. A company has now come in from Scotland, and they can turn the waste from bourbon, and I know it's hard to believe there's any waste created while making delicious Kentucky bourbon, and turn it into green methane gas that qualifies as renewable but can go through our existing pipeline system. I mean, that is really elegant and proves that drinking Kentucky bourbon can help save the world.
Yeah. Love that. Well, Governor, we know you have other things to be doing today, so thank you so much for taking the time. It's an honor to be able to sit down here and talk to you about all this.
Well, thanks for coming in, and thanks for everything you all are doing in Kentucky. The energy is exciting.